The latter of which is with us in the studio, Latour, Dow Jones CEO and publisher of the Wall Street Journal. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Dubai. Welcome to the studio, here to speak at the World Government Summit. So let's start with the topic. You're on a panel discussion about, in simple terms, the future of the media industry, which has not been pretty for the past 20 years in many areas. In simple terms, what are you going to be telling the audience tomorrow?
Well, while there's a lot of negativity about news media, my view is fundamentally optimistic in that there is higher demand for reliable information than ever before. And so that's what I'll be leaning into, explaining why that demand exists and why I expect for that to continue, and how our company, Dow Jones, the Wall Street Journal, but also many other media companies, hopefully, can really lean into that and meet that demand. Now, there's definitely challenges, and those challenges we can unpack. I'm sure you have a lot of questions about those, but I like to focus on where we can grow and how we can meet that demand at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty, when facts are perhaps more important than before. Those are just some of the topics that I'll hit, small topics, as you can tell.
Well, the future of the news media is bright for a company like yours, Dow Jones. You're part of News Corp, but you do break out your numbers on an annual basis, and you're doing well. You had a record year last year in terms of revenue. Subscriptions, the bulk of how you make your money, but your financial news, and that's always had a business model. Even over the past 20 years, Bloomberg has been nailing it. It's the non-financial news media that struggles. For example, you're on a panel tomorrow with Mark Thompson of CNN. That's not a subscription-based model. They laid off a couple of hundred journalists recently. And for the non-subscription financial news media, and you're quite a small niche in that, that's a bigger challenge, is it not?
Well, you're absolutely right in that the business community recognizes the value of information because, frankly, they make money off of that. They base their decisions on that. But I would hesitate to say that only business news can succeed in this environment. If you look at smaller publications like The Information or The Free Press, both relatively new, they have a very clear sectoral focus, going very deep on different topics, and are succeeding with that. Now, it's my view that by having a unique identity, by being very clear about what you stand for, you can actually make money, whether that's in business or in other sectors.
Let's talk about a more profound challenge to the news industry, not so much the business model, but you said in a recent letter, our mission is to provide the world's most trusted journalism, data and analysis to help people make decisions. Great. Who would disagree with that? But you also quoted in that statement Emma Tucker from the Wall Street Journal saying, we live in a fractured news environment where adherence to truth and objectivity is fragile. How do you square those two?
Well, I think those are perfectly complementary in the sense that where there's a lot of noise, the value of reliable information goes up. And so that's where we lean in, and that's where I think there is the opportunity for so many others. And I really do hope that there will be new startups and media companies reinventing themselves, leaning into that and using that specific reliability as a selling point.
And so people who subscribe to Dow Jones or listen to a show like The Business Breakfast, mainstream media, they value fact-checked news. They value having journalists sourcing stories, checking them. But not everyone does. Is it 1 in 5 people in the United States get their news from social media? It was the last Pew Research survey I read. It might even be higher than that. That is not fact-checked, is it? AI as well. Reading this morning, the BBC did a survey of news from the likes of ChatGPT and other chatbots. And it riddled with mistakes, basic things like getting the Prime Minister of the UK wrong.
Yeah, well, the ubiquity of unreliable news and unreliable information, again, creates that opportunity. And I also disagree with the notion that, for example, the younger generation, Gen Z, or beyond that, is not interested in news. We see actually some young anchors in social media context like Dylan Page coming up who talk about news provided by others. And so I think there is a yearning to understand a rapidly changing world by the new generation as well as by previous generations, and that demand needs to be accommodated. And so fundamentally missing that opportunity is a mistake, and going on the notion that a poll that says that only what did you say, 20% or 1 in 5 folks have access to reliable news, that is one level alarming. But when I look at it as an entrepreneur / businessman, I say, let's conquer those other 80%. That's a lot of market to take over.
And when it comes to artificial intelligence, and particularly generative AI, you say you're investing in it. One recent deal I saw was something you invested in called Integrity Check. You say it's the first of a suite of generative AI products, more on the B2B side of what Dow Jones does. In simple terms, can you explain what these things do? And they're not writing headlines on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, are they, Gen AI bots?
Well, we'll use AI throughout the company, and it really hits us in 3 ways. First, as you know, we are defenders of intellectual property there, and making sure that we have commercial agreements in place to protect our archives, to protect the hard work in which we've invested over a century of hard work. And our OpenAI deal was one of those. Then second, we have a lot of efficiency tools, again, across the company. So headline generation, we, for years preceding generative AI, have been automating headlines. And so not every headline that you see in the Wall Street Journal is automated, but a lot of what you see on Dow Jones Newswires is automated. And we have algorithmic stories that trigger trades. And then third, new products. Integrity Check is in the risk and compliance space, where people need very detailed data on, for example, who their business partner can be. And this particular tool allows customers to self-screen and save a lot of time and money before they go into a deep search on which business partners to do business with around the region, for example.
Meantime, Richard Dean, special guest in the studio with us.
Yeah, Alma Latour, the CEO of the Dow Jones Media Empire and publisher of the Wall Street Journal, here for the World Government Summit in Dubai. Alma, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, great to be here.
Let's talk about the Middle East. A couple of months ago, I read this. Dow Jones expanding in the Middle East, starting off with Media City in Qatar. You said the Gulf's position as an emerging hub of innovation in tech and AI requires that we strengthen our presence in the region.
Absolutely.
What are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, why that statement? We reflect the world as it is with our staff, with our coverage, and we need to constantly rebalance our coverage portfolio, if you will. So making sure that we look at the world with the right balance. And so that necessitates to be here more seriously than we already have been. Obviously, we've had a long presence here covering the region with the Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones Newswires. Then throughout the years, the investments have sort of waxed and waned. But right now, we are deeply committed to expand in the region. We made a start, as you said, in Qatar by importing one of the franchises, the leading franchises of the Wall Street Journal, WSJ Tech Live. That's an event that also brings a lot of coverage. But you should expect us to continue to expand our presence. And that is across the board. So for the people who don't know, the Wall Street Journal is obviously our flagship. And so that will continue to expand both in its brand presence and in its reporting presence. And that's necessary. But we also have a lot of B2B products that are very specialized. Really, Dow Jones is a company of verticals. Business news is one vertical. Wealth and investing is another. Energy is, frankly, our fastest growing business. Energy data, analytics, convening power, and news around that. And so that is massive, obviously, in this region. Risk and compliance, and then other industries will follow. All of that pertains to the Gulf region, and some of that is being led, or there's certainly very heavy participation from this region. And so all those reasons and more is why we're here. That's why I'm visiting much more frequently than in the past.
Well, we're delighted to have you here. Much as we love Qatar, it would be great to see expansion here in the UAE, selfishly, but we would say that, wouldn't we? Finally, Alma, only a couple of minutes with you. One of One of the panels you're on this week at the summit is on storytelling. And that's going to be of a lot of interest to people listening to or watching to a show like this. Or even the business leaders you've met in the green room this morning, like Thomas Promoten of the AI company Presight. Business leaders want to know how to tell their story better so they can get in the journal or just in general. What are the problems when it comes to storytelling among business leaders that you see? And what advice can you give them about doing storytelling better?
Well, I think good storytelling starts with being rooted in facts and actually knowledge. Do you understand what your product is about? That creates authenticity. It allows you to speak from the heart, from the gut, which I think is incredibly important. So you need to feel very, very comfortable with the material that you represent. And that, I think, allows you to then tell better stories. It will put you at ease. That storytelling is critical. Right, to explain what your product is about, what is the essence of it, and can you do that in just a few seconds if you must? But it all goes back, in my view, to feeling that sense of comfort and deep knowledge.
But it's often a skill that business leaders lack, isn't it? I mean, we interviewed doing 1,500 interviews a year on this show. Some people are much better at storytelling than others. Others just turn up with a list of talking points put together by the PR and marketing department. We tell them that doesn't work and they don't sound great. Be great to hear it from you.
Yeah, you want to have micro examples, microcosms. You want to speak again from knowledge. If you're just rattling off talking points, then it's hard to make an emotional connection. Without an emotional connection, I think it's hard to tell a story. I spent a couple of days here at a pre-summit called Not a Summit, which was really impressive. A lot of CEOs there, a lot of private conversation. And at the end of the day and a half here, I told some CEOs and said, what is the one thing that this whole event had in common? And that's we were all telling stories. We were all sharing stories. And so business equates storytelling. It is so critically important. And again, it goes back to, do you have the passion? Do you have the knowledge? Do you have ready examples from your experience and not prescribed by somebody?
Finally, who do you think does it particularly well in business today? People that we can look up to and maybe try and emulate?
Well, there are so many ways to tell a story. I think it's somebody telling a massive story in his own way that I don't think can be imitated very easily. At the moment, dominating the headlines is Elon Musk as a CEO, telling stories also through his actions and by sharing photos of himself in different situations. So that I think would be a countercultural almost example that leads the way in a challenging way or in a provocative way, I would like to say. So other people who tell great stories, the Disney story is always amazing. I think from Wall Street there are some great stories that emerge. It always goes back to a CEO knowing his company. Jamie Dimon, I would say, knows his company quite well. But sometimes, if you're too comfortable with your narrative and you think that's the only thing that exists, you might actually be blindsided. And you still need to have a 360 view of the outside world.
Alma Latour, great talking to you. Appreciate your time this morning. Speaking this week at the World Government Summit, as are many, CEO of Dow Jones and publisher of the Wall Street Journal. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for being here.